Howdy, Ags. Welcome back to the Aggie Central Podcast, where we'll be talking all things cultish. But right now, you care most about football, with season being just a couple of short weeks away. So, like me, you're here because you got a fever, and the only prescription is more Aggie football. So now let me write you out a prescription. On tap tonight, we going for our season prediction part 2. We're going to update on fall camp and where I stand on QB1. Then talk about the strengths of this team on offense and defense. So my recommendation to you, if you want the maroon Kool Aid tapped right into your arm, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Why? Why do this? So as you can see, if it's not obvious, I'm invested in you. The upgrades are for you. The content is for you. Okay? More than that, subscribe so that I can bring you previews each week, game reactions each week. I'm going to cover every single game every single week, all the way through the season. More than that, I'm going to bring you the first flyover, the spirit of Aggieland. I'll bring you the war hymn. There's a spirit, if there's going to be one this year. Let's hope there's going to be one. I'll bring you the first pregame entrance as well, and any other good bull that comes along the way. So let's review where we stand. First things first is we got to do fall camp update. Got to talk about that presser and everything that's going on with the presser before we can get into any of the good stuff, right? Jimbo says we haven't had any major injuries. Nothing season ending, which is good. I thought when he talked about this a couple weeks ago, I was like, we're going to have to knock on wood. I better find me some wood real quick. Going to have to knock on it because he's setting us up. I'm very superstitious. I'm a baseball kind of guy. We got some bumps and some bruises. No one banged up. Zune, Foster, Robinson, they've all played continuously, but they've also been cautiously held out and dealt with. So same thing is true for Sub-Zero. A piece of good news is, and I haven't seen much of this guy, but Tyreek Chappelle, caught my first glimpse of him this last week in some practice footage, and he looked the part. Ready to see what this guy wants to do in year 2 after being so successful in his year 1. QB. We all want to talk about QBs. So what's it going to be? Who's it going to be? Let me give you my thoughts on this based off of everything that I've been able to gather, what I've heard. I'm not an insider, but I'll tell you what it looks like from at least a 100-foot view. And I think right now I'm leaning King. I think most people are probably leaning King. I was probably leaning Max early on. Probably just 51-49. I think I see some value in Max that King may not have there, but vice versa, the same thing is true of King. So King's got some upsides that Max may not have, or maybe it's not that he doesn't have them, but some of the things we've seen out of Haynes is, just for instance, I was looking at his footwork the other day, and I was like, wow. It was just something that caught my eye. I wouldn't really think the footwork's going to be something that you're going to take notice of, but it's clear he's been working on it. So he's got his head in the right place. Now, he did throw an INT in yesterday's scrimmage. It was not 2, and it was not 4, although some people have been saying that. There was a second interception, not technically, because interceptions don't count when there's a holding call. So we're not going to worry about that. It was just the one. Now, the balance here is going to be between being a gunslinger and being a game manager. I need a little bit of both. But we're going to have to, be ready for an INT to be there. I don't need 3 INTs a game. I can deal with 1. That's something I can deal with. We'll see what he wants to do against Sam Houston State if he's going to be the starter. And against App State, I wouldn't expect much of INTs in the way of those games, but if he throws 2 or 3 in those, I'm wondering how long the leash is, if we're going to keep him in or going to go to max pretty quick. So, but again, let's not forget, and you may not know this, Haynes King only played with 40% of the offensive line yesterday. So Zune, Foster, and Robinson were all held out. Fothery has been a mainstay. And then we have had Moko also be there consistently. So it looks like those are going to be the guys. The good news out of the fall and the update from the pressers is that, again, no injuries and we have got solid backups. This is going to be one of our deepest teams we've had on both sides of the ball, and you're going to see that as being a theme throughout this talk. Okay, so before we get to part 2 of the prediction, don't forget to let me know where you're listening from in the comments. I've seen people from Skidmore, the Big D, Longview, Mansfield, Montana, Fort Worth, Corpus Christi, Jacksonville, Florida, Poolville, Texas, Bryan College Station, West Palm, Florida, Hotlanta, Pleasanton, Tucson, El Paso, and Taiwan. So let me know where you're coming from in the comments if you haven't done that already. I love knowing where you guys are coming from and seeing where the Aggie network can reach. Now we're going to go into Alabama, and when going into Alabama, I had us 5-0, but losing a single game, a single-digit game probably to the Tide in Tuscaloosa. So I think this is going to be a bit of a moral victory that we're going to come away with, just because this line is going to be 16, 17 points. We keep it to single digits. That's a win, and something that we can, work off of, especially going into the bye week next. So the bye week comes, the Ags rest, they heal up, they bolster the gains from the moral victory after keeping it close with Bama, all right? So then it's on to go fight the Roosters. Now, South Carolina right now, in ESPN's matchup predictor, we're the favorite at 63%. We've never lost to South Carolina. It's an 8-0 record, and we've scored over 40 points in the last 2 outings. Is this the year we're going to lose to South Carolina and Shane Beamer? I mean, we saw it last year against Arkansas, so it's possible. Some things to consider, though. We're outscoring them on average 35-16. So we're putting up 35 points on them on average and only giving up 16. Is it going to get better for them? How much better does it need to get for them to actually get the win? They do welcome a Spencer Rattler in for a transfer, but he's only got about 18 blue chippers to work with. For contrast, we're somewhere in the 56-plus range, give or take the accuracy of any 247 count at the time. Why would I predict a loss here? Somebody make a case. I'm not seeing it. I'm not drinking too much Kool Aid at this point either. Promise you. So if I were going to predict an L for us here, I'd have to have some major reason to. I mean, Rattler may give me pause, and the culture Beamer is building may give me a second thought. Overall, I just can't see it. Ultimately, the Ags are going to spur the Gamecocks and take the W home from Williams-Brice. That's what's going to happen. So, but can the Ags also put down a rebellion? Ole Miss up next. We're going to get them at Kyle Field. The matchup predictor there is also around that 60% range, interestingly enough. So, look, Ole Miss worries me the most about any of these second-half teams. There's something about them, maybe it's the Lane Kiffin factor. They've done well in the portal. But put this in context, okay? So I think this is probably the biggest second-half game we have. I don't know that it'll be the toughest. Auburn or LSU may be tougher, especially from a talent standpoint. But I really think that this is the shooting off point for our second half season. If we do what I think we were going to do in the first half and go 5-0 and win tough games against Arkansas and Mississippi State, and those are going to be tough games. Just let's go circle back for just a moment. Arkansas is good in the portal. They've got probably a great, maybe one of their best offensive lines going against our young defensive line early in the season. That's going to be a tough matchup. And the same is kind of going to be said for Mississippi State. But remember, I have this being a win for us because I think we're going to not get caught like we did last year. Big thing for us was the confusion that was being created for our quarterback, especially against Arkansas. We got to be much better prepared for that this year, okay? So if we go 5-0 into Alabama, lose one, come out of the first half of the season 5-1, win at South Carolina, and then come into Ole Miss, we've got a game here where we're looking to get to 7-1, okay? Now, at this point, I believe the rankings are getting ready to come out. So there's a lot to be said for the second half of the season. And I think a win here propels us to really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for what could be something like well over a 9-3 season, 10-2, 11-1, those kinds of things, if we're talking Kool Aid. So when we're doing that, if we're going to do that, this is going to be that game. So if we're going to have an 11-1 season, of course, this has got to be a win for the Aggies. But I think it's more than that. I think it's a game that if we get a win, it's going to give us a huge propulsion towards the 11-1. So we'll find out just how good this team is. Look, and this is a revenge game for us too. We have quite a few on the docket this year, but I don't think we played our best game last year, and I think we're looking to get something back here. This was a game where it looked like we just kind of fell flat. And I'm not sure how to say it any different than that or make more sense of it than that. So let's kind of talk about what this team is, though, when we think about how they beat us and what they might be getting ready to throw at us again. I don't really think they're a spread team. I don't think they're up-tempo or fast-paced. I mean, look, it is true. All those are true. But I think what I would do is I would describe them in a different way. I'd call them, either fast at the edge or quick decision. So what they're doing is they're making quick cuts and then they deliver the ball. They're looking for eye violations with movement, and then they're going to deliver. Then they take a shot down the field. It's predicated on knowing more, just like this is a lot of times with offenses versus defense. So offense reacts first, defense is always reactive. And so what they want to do is they want to harness that natural delay that's there versus defense versus offense. So what they can do is they can run a play and know exactly where it's going to go, and they're so good at being accurate and executing that they have a lot of success. So you can do a lot of things with a lot less talent when you're doing things like that. So it's like a scheme that they've got running here, and it's a great scheme. You've got to respect it. Now, they only return, or they're going to return about 50% of their offense and 68% of their D. So we stole away Durkin, and that's going to be some bulletin board material. Something else to consider is that they've got a bye week and then have Bama the following week. But they will be playing Auburn and at LSU the prior 2 weeks. So it could be a bit of a rough schedule for them coming into Kyle Field here. And then could they be looking to Bama a couple weeks later? They do have the bye, but they could be looking to, ahead to that and not think so much of us. I mean, we haven't got like a huge rivalry against them at this point. So are they really looking to stick it to us? Does the Durkin thing carry that much weight? I don't know that it does. But here, part of the theme for this second part prediction is wrapped up in my closing thoughts for this game. And that's simply that our D is going to be as stingy as ever. And we're going to be hitting on all cylinders when it comes to this game. We're just going to render Ole Miss basically as rebels without a cause. That's my shtick, and I'm sticking to that one on this one. I think we're going to get a pretty big win here that's going to propel us throughout the rest of the season. So Marshland is scarce in Central Texas, but the big Gators are going to come in and they're going to take their chance. Florida, it seems like this is going to get even more odd as these things go, as I'm keep checking the ESPN matchup machine that they've got. But we're a 70% favorite in this game. And this didn't really quite hit with me until I checked it again today, because I had heard some upset predictions for this game, meaning we're going to be the favorite probably, but Florida's getting a few nods. So let me go over some quick hitters on this when they come to town. It's going to be Billy Napier's first year. We're 3-2 in the series, going back to 1962. I think we lost the first one, then we won the next one in I think the Sun Bowl or something along those lines. We played 3 times since joining the SEC. We won the last 2, and you'll recall 2 matchups ago when Trey Williams, the human grasshopper, trucked that defender down near the goal line. And then 2020, Spiller mirrored that when he did the exact same thing, and that was the same year we started the 41-38 winning trend and got Jimbo's first top 5 win. So we got a little bit of history here with Florida, and they're coming back. They got a little motivation for that because I don't think they were real happy about that loss last time they came to Kyle Field. You remember we ran it about 8 times in a row to kind of take charge in that game. They're going to return like 72% of their offense, but only 50% of their D. And that is probably a number you want to focus on, because even though on offense they're going to have Anthony Richardson as QB1, and he's going to take those honors. He's very talented. He'll be accompanied by approximately 38 blue chip recruits, maybe not as many as you might think. They've been recruiting somewhere in the teens the last 3 or so years. So not as many as you might think Florida would have, right? But considering they come to town right after they face Georgia on the road, and with this being, a later game in the year, it's going to be hard for me to overlook the fact that their D-line is not very good. My understanding is this, after listening to some of their insiders and those that know the team quite well over the last month or so, is that they're not very deep at defensive line. They've got about 1 dude that they're confident in, and the rest are just kind of maybe C-type guys. And so later in the year, without a lot of backups, anybody goes down, it's really going to create a bunch of holes. A bunch of holes in that defensive line. So I really am leaning on this one in favor of the Aggies, and I think that this is going to end up being bad timing for the Gators. So right now, it's there's a drought in Texas, and there's very little water in sight, and the Gators are going to waddle back to Florida with an L, looking for a marsh, having been no match for the Aggies and the 12th man. I say that as it's raining, but it's been a hot summer, and they don't want to be anywhere near it, especially as hot as we're going to be. So, in my opinion, Auburn's going to need about a dozen War Eagles also circling the field, but we know how that ends for anybody that studies Auburn lore. So, playing at Auburn, they'll have Bigsby, but no Bo Nixon this year. He's gone to Oregon. TJ Finley's going to take over, or does he? I mean, Calzada transfers from us over to Auburn. Big storyline going on there. Is he going to win the job? It looks like Finley's going to be the dude. Looks like he's going to take the job. They think that he's pretty capable. Apparently he had something that they would like to call a nice outing against Bama. Well, Calzada had his too. I think some maybe better known folks are calling for Calzada needing to win this, but they're pretty much leaning that Finley's going to. They just think it would be better for Auburn if Calzada did. So I don't know. You might have the Texas kind of situation going on right here, and you got some interference playing. I don't know. Calzada's got the W over Alabama. We saw that. But we also saw the other 11 games, or I guess actually 10 games that he played in, and it was not impressive. So I don't think I can blame him for playing Finley if that's who it's going to be. He has had some off-the-field issues. I'm not sure exactly what it was. There was some sort of arrest or something going on there, but it doesn't seem really to be holding him back. And if it's not a distraction, then I wouldn't worry about it too much when it comes to the matchup. So, this has been a pretty streaky matchup when it comes to playing Auburn. I'm going to go back to, I think we pummeled them the first year, 2012, if I'm not mistaken, with Johnny. Then we had that horrible matchup the following year with Horse Collar. I have never had a lot of love for this team ever since that, and we've had a couple of bad beats too. You remember them coming back with Mond, I think, something back in like 2017, somewhere in that area. Yeah, so we're 7-5 all time in this series, and it's really gone back and forth, especially the first 4 years. We win one, they win one. So we went back and forth the first 4 years. Then they win 3 in a row. We've won the last 2, and now we're going to go to Jordan Hare. So How's that going to work out? We're going to even this thing back up. History would say so. Who knows, though? Oddly enough, they are favored by ESPN's matchup predictor at 61%. I told you it was going to get more weird. It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I'm not sure what to make of that. They returned 65% of their production, which is about probably one more player on each side of the ball than we returned. And they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 54% blue chip ratio. You know, we're packing 70. So if we're packing 70 and they're 54, what's the deal with the 61? Maybe it's a lot of seniority. Maybe they think that's going to play into this. Maybe home field advantage. It's really tough to say. I think the biggest question for me is, what are we going to be fighting for this time of year? That's not something you put down on a piece of paper. It's not X's and O's. For me, if we're coming into this game as I've expected us to come into this game so far, and I've lost track of my win-loss total, but it's somewhere in the 7-1, 8-1 area, right? Then we're looking at playing for a New Year's Six game at this point. This team's they're gonna know that. Rankings will probably be out depending on the week at this point, and they're gonna be wanting to make the most of the season. I think based off of that, all the other things that we've talked about, the X factor is how motivated this team's gonna be for this game. The Farmers are gonna get a win, and we're going to even up this series. So going over to UMass right next, and we're going to be playing the Minutemen, right? So what is there to say? I think the only thing that really needs to be said is when we finish up here, the Minutemen are going to be 32nd men. That's what this is going to be. We're going to move right on over then to LSU, and you know what's been going on with them. So Brian Kelly has taken the reins. Now, they return about exact same amount as we do in production. They're 62. I think we are actually right at 61. Just over 50% for them on offense, but 69% on defense. So the big storyline here is that Max Johnson transfers from them to us this last year, right? And that kind of leaves them, you know, kind of in you know, limbo, I guess. What are they going to do there? I mean, they did play Miles Brennan quite a bit last year. He was a dude for them. So I originally didn't think there was much to be worried about because of that situation. He did play solid for them, I believe, last year whenever he had work. I believe he got injured, and that's what ended up bringing in Max, if I'm not mistaken. But it looks like Nussmeier is going to take the reins, which is actually turned into kind of a situation, because right after Nussmeier was named the starter last week, immediately following, Miles up and retired. He said that's it for him. So what does that say about the team right now? Brian Kelly has had a really sketchy start so far, and that's if you discount all the dancing that he's been doing, okay? So if we include the dancing, then we even come to some more radical conclusions. But we should have quite a bit, again, to play for this time of year. So this is our last game. We come into this game 10-1, and we're looking to make it 11-1. We're thinking about trying to make a playoff berth at this point. This is a huge game. Huge game, huge game, huge game. But don't forget about the revenge factor. We've talked about that in a few games, but I don't think it's going to be any more relevant than it will be in this game. You think that we might have, you know, a lot of motivation just because it's the end, and if there are playoff implications at stake in this game, that would be enough. There's going to be more. That strip last year and that whistle dead, I know that's not technically on LSU, but it went in their favor. It went in their favor. So that's just something that we just haven't had real good results with. And I'm not here to cry about it or whine about it, to be quite honest, but when you see it, you got to call it like it is. Same thing happened against Georgia, back in 2019, maybe it was 2018. Get the year mixed up. But you know about all the holding calls. And this strip call was incorrect. It was badly incorrect. So we're going to be playing highly motivated. We're going to have the best depth that we've ever had. We're going to be playing at Kyle Field, and we're going to be out for blood on this one. I guarantee it. It's the most talented team we will play outside of Alabama with a 66-ish% blue chip ratio. But I've got the win here because I'm confident in us. Let me say it again. I'm confident in us. So this might be a toss-up on paper. But a motivated team, a team that's playing in Kyle Field, that's going to get us the win. I feel really good about it. So here's where I'm at. I'm at 11-1. That's the mark. Let me say it again. You may not have heard it because you're so used to, BAS that 11-1 sounds extremely foreign to you. 11-1. Drink some Kool Aid. It's time. Now we need to start taking this stuff and moving on. It's okay to drink the Kool Aid. It's the best antidote for battered Aggie syndrome. You know what I'm talking about. You think, no way this could be true. Yeah, it could be true. But I do want to tell you about my percentages, okay? So, yeah, I've got a prediction of 11-1. We're probably going to be favored in at least 10 of these games. Maybe 11. Right, I talked about the Auburn game. The matchup predictor has them favored right now. That's probably likely to change, especially if we have some of the results that we have earlier in the season going into that game. That will change. But 11-1. So I give that approximately, I'm going to put a bit of a ballpark figure on there and kind of a shot. I think it's a 10% chance. I can't go terribly high on a 11-1 season. It's just because of, it's near perfect. How likely is it for any team that they don't experience any injuries or some other team doesn't catch them, or some other unknown factor creeps up? But 10% at the same time is high for me. I would have only given us, I don't even know if I would have given us a 1% chance in any other year. Not even going into that 2020 year, I don't think I would have seen something like that. And it's not that it's always supposed to be predictable, but 10% is much higher than what I would normally have predicted us to be able to do 11-1 at like 1%. What, 11-1? 1% would, be reasonable. So 10% is very high considering. So I just want to put that in perspective. Now 10-2, getting to 10-2, I think that's a solid 40% chance. And I am going to try and lowball these a little bit because I don't want to go too high. I don't want to be, say, over optimistic. But when we get to 9-3, I've got us at 80% chance. 8-4 is a 100% chance. I don't see us going any lower than 8-4. It's a 100% chance we're going to go 8-4 or better. Okay, think about this. And I know any team can do this, but I want to talk about my confidence now because there's lots of different ways to kind of look at this. And I know this is not a popular way to look at it because any team can do it. But the fact of the matter is last year with that team that we had, the one with Calzada, the one that had a porous pass defense, we went 8-4. And we were one pass breakup away from 9-3. It's fact. That pass from Max against us when we played LSU was 9-3. We go 9-3 last year. The narrative probably looks a little bit different, but we didn't, and we go 8-4. And you have things like August 4th being A&M Day, right? These are the kinds of things that come up out of that. So keeping that in mind, let's talk about where the confidence and the strength of this team are. Don't forget, previous videos have talked about us having the best defensive back group I think that we've ever had. But we also need to go through a couple of updates. Didn't share these about the press conference. It wasn't shared in the press conference, but you got to piece these together. So you got to be looking close, finding info wherever you can. The scrimmage yesterday was very solid by the defense. You've got folks like McKinley Jackson, Isaiah Rakes, and Shamar Turner just killing it. Killing it. So, like I said, take that BAS and toss that junk right out the window. You don't need it. Don't worry about that junk this season, because get ready. This defense is going to be sneaky good. Now, somebody in the comments recently said, it is a great comment. I've got to point them out. They were kind of saying something that was in my head, but what I was trying to say was something different. Partially, I think our strength is going to be in the offense, because our offense was so bad last year that it will be so much better this year. It's going to look like our absolute strength. I don't think it's our absolute strength. I actually think our defense will be our absolute strength. I think between the offense and the defense, our defense is going to be the better unit. It's just that the offense was so bad again that, and they're likely to be so much better this year, it's going to be hard to understand which is which, okay? So I think that statement's accurate. So whoever said that, you're dead on. I do think actually that the defense will be better, and that's going to happen because of that secondary unit. And you've got guys like Andre White and Chris Russell playing very well right now, right? I haven't heard much about Edgerrin Cooper, but we know what he's capable of. And even if he's coming in from a backup role for these guys, that's huge. You've got All-American Antonio Johnson. Again, you've got McKinley Jackson, a seasoned veteran. See, what the national pundits are sleeping on is thinking that we are rebuilding our entire defensive line. That's not true. It's just not true. Fidel Diggs has had plenty of playing time. So has Isaiah Rakes. You know about McKinley Jackson. We're looking at putting, Tunis on the other side, maybe Shamar over there. That's a huge defensive line. I mean, these guys are tearing it up. National pundits aren't thinking about that. They're just thinking like, okay, we're missing Peavy, we're missing Leal. Look at Clemens and the stuff that he's doing with the Jets right now. Like, how do you replace that? And that's a good question, but that's all they're saying. They're not saying, oh yeah, but here's who's coming in. So that's why I think our defense will be our absolute strength. So now we got to go over to the other side of the ball though, because our defense is going to win us some games. But how anemic our offense was last year, and thinking about, again, that point about bringing up that pass and us being that close from going 9-1, how much better are we going to be if our offense is like serviceable 80% of the time? Because there were times last year that we weren't serviceable, okay? So let me put this into perspective, okay? I need you to listen to this real closely. So dial in for a moment, okay? This is how anemic our offense was last year. We had one offensive TD against Kent State up to 4 minutes left in the third, okay? With 4 minutes left in the third, one offensive TD, okay? We had one TD against Colorado. We had one TD against Arkansas. Against Mississippi State, our first touchdown wasn't until the second half, and our second touchdown came with 1 minute to go in the third. And that was all. Auburn, one offensive TD. Remember, Clemens got the second one with a scoop and score, okay? Versus Ole Miss, we got our first TD middle of the third quarter. Second TD was late in the fourth. And these, again, I'm talking strictly offensive TDs, right? Because that's what we're at with. We're at this with the offense. We got our second TD versus LSU in the fourth quarter. That's how bad the offense was. So let that sink in. That's how terrible they were. Can you get any worse than that? It's really difficult to understand how much worse that you could be. I don't think it could be. So our defense was a big part of last year's 8-4 win. But we almost made 9-3 off of that terrible offense. And now, if our defense is better, Oh Lord. Oh Lord. And and this is kind of making me giddy a little bit. And then if our offense is better, okay, fine. I haven't even got to the Trump factor yet. What are the X factors? It's making me more excited as more as I get to this, right? So the Kool Aid is rushing through me right now. It's filling my veins, as it should be you. And this is just on the offense and defensive side of things. We have the capability to easily repeat the 8-4 part. Easily. So how much more likely, even if our defense is like we think they're going to be and just nasty, and our offense is better, are you thinking that's going to end up with like 7-5 or 8-4? We did 8-4 with that kind of play last year. I've got to connect you to it. So with better play from the defense and particularly the offense, I think 9-3 is a no-brainer. I absolutely do. And so my strength in these schedules and this prediction and the why I am sticking with the 11-1 is because how confident I am in those two units in particular. But you're just thinking, hey, Central, what about special teams, right? So we haven't talked about special teams. We got to talk about Sub-Zero. You know, we've got to talk about a chain doing kickoffs or Yoel Keith Brown doing kickoffs. We have that to talk about. We also have Caden Davis to talk about because Caden Davis apparently is capable of kicking 75-yard field goals. That was with the wind, but that's a long ways. I don't care with the wind or with a tornado or what. That's a long ways. So he's good from about 55 in is what I'm hearing, and that's a hell of a weapon. Hell of a weapon. Our special teams, we got Caden Davis doing field goals, Sub-Zero returning punts. I think a chain will still be doing kickoffs. It'll be interesting to see if he is doing those, though. Maybe they do let Brown in on that and take over his duty since a chain will be, RB1. But don't forget we got Nick as well, and he's one hell of a punter. So we got a really good set of special teams. And so in any prediction for the season, you'd want to think about, how is this going to go wrong? How can I miss out? Because you've got to factor that in. If you're going to go 11-1, then you've got to factor in at least like one, maybe two games where things don't go your way. Okay? So if they don't go your way, that means in one of the phases of the game, likely you're not really up to par. Well, if you're not doing so well defensively, your offense is probably still clicking. But what you need is something to kind of tip the scales. And as good as our special teams are going to be this year, we have that three-phase attack that all coaches talk about all the time. And our special teams are likely to be one of the best units in the country. And so if we were going to, if I'm going to say, okay, we're going to slip up here, then it makes sense to kind of take into account, well, if it is a tight game and we're not playing up to our normal standard, maybe we get into that bye week after Alabama and then go into South Carolina, right, and we're a little sluggish. Maybe we're coming off that loss, and then, South Carolina is doing better than they normally would. We're going to need something to make the difference. Special teams, is that something? Do they have the special teams? Maybe they do. We could always say those kinds of things, but the point is that we have got an exceptional special teams that can make us the difference. And that, along with the offense and the defense and everything we've talked about with them, is where I think the strength of this team is going to come into play to hold that prediction at 11-1. So it's documented. I've recorded it. I'm putting it out to you. We'll see how it works out, of course. But if I'm going to make a prediction and I'm going to give you an honest thing, and we're going to lay my money somewhere, I think we got the 10-2 at a really solid rate. If I'm going to make ideal predictions, I've got us 11-1. So you take those how you want them, okay? Take them how you want them. And either way, either one of those is going to be one hell of a season, and I think this is going to be it. So buckle up, get your Kool Aid ready, and save your emotions for for all the games, and don't get too far ahead of yourself. But this is going to be a really fun season, really fun season. I cannot wait for September 3rd. So again, I'll be there. I will bring you the flyover. I'll bring you There's a Spirit, the Spirit of Aggie Land, the War Hymn. I'm going to bring you all that. Go ahead and subscribe so you can get it. Again, it's all here for you. And whatever more I can do, I'll be doing. As you can see, we've already done some of these upgrades. So I'm looking forward to giving you even more. Love every second of it. And we'll be back next week with a game week prediction. Next Sunday is game week prediction. So get ready. Here we are. We are there. Next week, we're prepared to beat the hell out of Sam Houston State, and I'll be there for every minute of it. So.